I'm really, like, my experience with the stuff is, like, hands-on, like, in the field. Like, it's, like, wireless is kind of, like, takes on different characteristics when you're going long range with it, using, you know, big antennas and big radios and stuff. But, in particular, like, Microtech and Motorola Canopy, I've played around with those quite a bit. So, that, Motorola's approach is kind of cool. It's a little different. Like, they use, like, each one of the radios has a GPS locator on it, and they use GPS coordinates to, like, time the packets just perfectly to try and orchestrate this flow of radio that's got, like, no interference. You know, there's not, like, a lot of noise like you would get with retail grade equipment or with Microtech. It's like a symphony. It's just perfect.
Wow. That's a pretty crazy approach.
Yeah, I don't understand the specifics because I'm just kind of getting started, you know, playing with it. This is my first time being exposed to it, but I do know in the industry that, you know, there's Microtech people, and then typically there's people who use Microtech, like, exclusively on the networks, and people who use Motorola Canopy, and they're both, like, religious about their platforms, and they don't like to mix and match and mingle, you know. They're like, oh, we're going to go with Microtech the whole way, or Canopy, you know. But the Microtech guys don't like the Motorola equipment because apparently it causes there's some sort of side effect where it causes some kind of, like, really devastating interference to that platform because of the proprietary timing that the Motorola stuff uses. I don't understand the specifics of it, but yeah, Microtech guys don't like it. And I've seen the interference, like, firsthand, and yeah, it's not good. But I mean, it's never good when you have, you know, too many transmitters near each other. And these wireless companies are always competing, so you always have to kind of manage the frequencies, you know.
Like destructive interference between something with the same frequency?
Yeah, exactly. You know, if you've got, you know, clients like on, for example, wireless A, you know, 5 gigahertz, whatever, which is pretty typical because it carries quite a bit of bandwidth, and you know, you've got clients that are spread out, you know, like 7 miles, 10 miles, even up to 15 miles, and, you know, you've got a competitor's tower that's broadcasting on 5 gigahertz, relatively close, you know, with a few miles of your own tower. That can cause quite a bit of disruption if the channels aren't managed properly, you know.
Would the FCC, like, step in and do something about that?
No, I mean, 802.11, all this stuff is pretty much unlicensed, you know, 5 gigahertz and 2.4.
Yeah, unless you're on, like, Dragon Wave or something that's like a licensed spectrum, you can pretty much blast as much, you know, just regular Wi-Fi.
Dragon Wave.
Yeah, you can just blast as much Wi-Fi traffic into the air as you want to.
Like, wait a minute. What about, like, malicious traffic? Okay, so you Fixer, your experience with this stuff seems like it's a bit different from mine. It's extremely different. I didn't even know that the signal actually goes miles. And Tully, your experience is completely different from mine too, it seems like.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's typical retail hardware, and, you know, there's the kind of limitations that, you know, and you kind of operate within those parameters. But when you have, like, big commercial grade, you know, grid antennas and 600 milliwatt, you know, 1,000 milliwatt wireless cards, like, you know, in an exterior enclosure, like up on the roof, I mean, you can go really far with 802.11a in particular. The only drawback is, you know, it's line of sight. Like, and what's weird too is, since we're kind of talking about the difference between, you know, long range and short range, if you're using 802.11a and you're right next to the access point, like in your house, you probably get it pretty good, like in the other room, you know, and you're going to go, well, this isn't really line of sight. I'm picking up a signal. But when you go outdoors and you go long range with it, and actually, let me kind of slow down. You'll notice that 2.4, you'll actually get more throughput on the 2.4 AP than a 5 gigahertz AP in a typical home environment. Just because of the way 802.11a is, you know, it doesn't like to go through walls. But when you're going long range, it's clearly superior. You get so much more throughput on it.
Right. It seemed like the lower frequency would go further than higher frequency, of course, just like regular radio.
Well, I mean, yeah, you'd think so. And actually, lower frequencies like 900 megahertz, that stuff goes pretty far, and it's really good at penetrating, like, you know, trees, forests, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the problem with 900 megahertz is you get a lot of saturation in the air. And, you know, when you get that much, I mean, it's just really more susceptible to saturation than any other frequency.
Why don't you go ahead and define saturation?
Okay, well, like, saturation is just saturation. I mean, like, if you get, like, a whole bunch of wireless in the air, you know, you're really not going to notice it too much if you're, you know, in a home environment using retail equipment. But no matter what equipment you're using, when you're going long range, you know, you're trying to squeeze every last bit you can out of it, and the signal's it's really a lot more susceptible to interference when you're going long range. You know, if you're pulling like a, I don't know, on 2.4, if you're pulling like a neg 68 or something like that, you'd probably be doing all right in the home environment. But if you're going long range and you've got, you know, a competitor broadcasting on the same frequency on the same channel, you know, you're probably going to have like some seriously degraded throughput as a result of that, you know?
Yeah.
Just because of all the noise, yeah.
Okay. So this started off well, right?
Let me I'm going to stop here and take a drink of water.
All right, totally.
Out of air.
what is, like, what kind of experience, what's your best, like, what kind of experience would you say?
My experience is more along the lines of, like, protocols. I think his experience is more along the lines of setting everything up and
Field monkey.
That you're more of the hardware and more of the software, and I think Doug's more of the just breaking shit.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely come from a different side, which is good to have all three of us like this. This is I think this will make it for a good show.
Yeah, what I've done in the past and what I've worked with is more the software side and getting a bunch of access points to connect back to a controller and hardware, software optimization, kind of stuff like that. For example, getting 2 million clients in a MAC address table and being able to do lookups quickly and figure out which radio or port that's coming from.
Right, and then you've also got to troubleshoot too, because you have to figure out where the bottleneck's at, correct?
Yeah.
And you got to figure out, well, is it a signal issue, or is it CPU or whatever,
Most of the time, it's what we've run into is just like look up from, say, instead of storing it in the RAM, you would store it in the CPU, like in the L3 cache or something like that.
Right.
Because you're using
cool.
significantly less clock cycles for each one of those.
Right. Of course, you have limited L2 as opposed to memory, so
yeah,
you probably have to use those resources quite wisely. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to. There's a lot of optimizations I can't really go into, but that's just a broad example.
Yeah, I guess my Wi-Fi experience started with, what was it called? It was a distribution. It was a security distribution. It was called Auditor. Have you guys ever heard of that?
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Backtrack on, yeah.
Yes, that's why you see Prism 2 in my show notes. Yeah,
I have one. I have a Prism here, actually, like in my hand right now. I have two of them. They're Sanayo NL2511 CD Plus PCMCIA cards.
Yeah.
I think they're 200 milliwatts.
Mine was a D-Link. I had mine for so long, I finally gave it up probably maybe 2 years ago. I sent it to Altel, who needed a PCMCIA wireless card really badly. And that thing, I remember using that thing with Auditor. Like, my experience is being a guy, say, and I'm just going to keep saying the word lab, just to keep things... Okay, so imagine I put my lab together and I set up with WEP, right? And I go outside, right? Then with Auditor was my very first experience I ever had with wireless anything at all, ever. Like, when I first got my Auditor disc, I got my first, brand new laptop. I got my very first wireless card, which was PCMCIA.
I think I busted my theory on, Backtrack 2, which is a derivative